flag went down, and a new world champion they did crown. At Monza the checkered flag went down, and a new world champion they did crown. A Scottish farmer at the wheel, with steady hands and nerves of steel, on the sport has made his mark. Let's tell the story of Jim Clark.
The story of Jim Clark is the story of two worlds so far apart that it seems impossible that one man could have united them so successfully. The shepherd's crook and the crash helmet. The peace and quiet of farm life in the Scottish lowlands contrasted with the roar and danger of the world's top racing circuits. These, then, are the two worlds of Jim Clark. The first, his farm at Edington in Berwickshire.
Born 27 years ago into a farming family, life on the land has always interested Jim Clark, and after his education at Clifton Hall Preparatory School and Loretto School, he worked as a shepherd on his father's farm. It was as a youngster of 10 that he first showed an interest in cars and driving, and at that age he often drove an old Austin 7 around the tracks and fields at home. Soon, however, he had a place of his own, running the 1,200-acre farm at Edington Mains between Fulden and Churnside. Here, with the help of his staff and looked after by his housekeeper, Mrs. Helen McCormack, his farming activities include fattening Aberdeen Angus cross cattle with the odd few Herefords and several flocks of pedigree sheep. And it is perhaps among the sheep that Jim comes into his own. One of the sales he attends regularly is the Kelso Ram sale, to which he hurried back from Monza this year. Lot 2 from Edington Mains, shortly to come under the hammer, with Farmer Clark speculating as to whether they will make the price he feels they should, although he admits that, like any other farmer, he is never satisfied with what they bring. And the tension round an auction ring is perhaps a link with the tension round a racing circuit as the bidding mounts. And Jim Clark works just as hard to show his sheep to prospective buyers as he does to show his rear wheels to his rivals on the track. For in only 4 years of top-class motor racing, Jim Clark has achieved the title that has eluded many great drivers, that of world champion.
And that's why Jim Clark is here tonight. Jim, congratulations, first of all, on this wonderful achievement.
Thank you, Derek.
And let's go back to something we just heard in that film. At 10 years old, you were charging round your father's farm on an old Austin 7. How many cows and sheep did you mow down in those days?
Oh, well, I don't think I was driving fast enough then to knock anything down.
When did you first get the driving bug, Jim?
Well, I think I first got the bug for speed, really. I used to charge around on my bicycle and race people on bicycles before I ever thought of doing it on cars.
Did your parents give you any encouragement whatsoever to pursue this hobby of yours?
No, in fact, the contrary. They tried to dissuade me, and it was took me quite a time to let them see.
You went to Loretto School, which is in Edinburgh. Did you read a lot about racing drivers then?
Yes, I think I used to read the three books that were in the library then about once a term.
Did you have any particular idol?
Well, I suppose even then Stirling Moss was at the peak of his career, and I used to read all about him, and I suppose he really became my idol.
Would you say that you fashioned yourself on anyone, on Stirling Moss, for instance?
No, I don't think so. I think I picked it up as I went along and learned as I went.
When did you get your first chance as a racing driver?
Well, that was in 1956 when, with a friend, Ian Scott Watson, I went up to Crimond in Aberdeenshire.
Well, we have Ian Scott Watson, your good friend, sitting alongside you now. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Derek.
Jim just told us that you gave him, actually, his first drive in a racing car. Could you take up the story from there?
Yes, I did. That was at Crimond, as he said. And he was 3 seconds a lap faster than me in his first lap, and I'd been practicing all morning at it. But then after we joined the board, Mr. McBain, the late Jock McBain, from Churnside, saw Jimmy driving one of my cars, and thereafter reformed the Border Reavers team and asked me to organise it and Jimmy to do the driving. And that's really how he started motor racing properly.
I've heard it said, Ian, that even at that early age, and in those days, it was obvious that Jim had something rather special as a driver. Would you confirm this?
Yes. I didn't wasn't in a position to really be able to say whether he or not he was a great driver. But I was sure he was, in my own opinion, and events have proved that he is. And I think that was a generally accepted fact that he was a budding world champion, even back in 1958.
How did you feel about it in these days, Jim?
Well, I was more content just to make it a weekend hobby and enjoy it as much as I could, although I still do enjoy it very much indeed.
Did you find that you were sort of dismissing the opposition fairly easily? Were you getting very confident about things?
Well, in all fairness, I think I did have a better car than a lot of other people then, but it was still a difficult car to drive and a very fast car, and you couldn't take very many chances with it.
What about your skill as a mechanic? Do you consider it absolutely necessary to be a top-class mechanic, to be a racing driver?
Well, I'm not a qualified mechanic by any means, and I like fiddling with cars, but I'm just about as likely to make them go wrong as to make them go better.
You agree with that, Ian?
I don't know. He's quite good.
Well, we know that in 1958 and 59 and 60, Jim, you were winning races in the north of England and a bit further afield, but by 1961, you were really in the big time. At that year, at the end of that year in South Africa, you were virtually unbeatable.
Sterling Moss looking cool before setting a scorching pace. He lapped at a record 93 miles an hour after starting at the back of the grid. Trevor Taylor second in the Rennes Grand Prix the week before. Moss fought his way through the field to finish second in a Lotus Climax number 7. There he goes with a wave for a driver who let him pass. And here's number 6, Maston Gregory. After 65 laps, half the 20 cars were out of the race. Jim Clark, driving a Lotus Climax, covered the 200 miles at an average of just under 90 miles an hour.
And Sterling Moss, writing recently, said,
"He is a born driver. I was having trouble with Jimmy Clark in 1961. It was plain he was not the boy to take on if you were driving last year's motor car. I am convinced Jimmy is the best in the world."
But 1961 was also a year of tragedy.
Monza 1961, and a huge crowd lines the sun-baked Italian circuit. Clark and Von Trips, the German driver, are racing wheel to wheel when suddenly Von Trips spins off the track into the spectators, killing himself and 12 others.
Monza in Italy, a track on which Jim Clark has had very mixed fortunes. Jim, the 1961 Monza disaster, we've heard a lot about it recently. You were one of the drivers involved. What exactly happened then?
Well, Von Trips and my car touched, and we both spun off. And Von Trips' car, unfortunately, hit a fence where the crowd were leaning against and killed several spectators and himself.
Are you as drivers always satisfied with the safety arrangements made for spectators on tracks?
Well, we do normally make an inspection before a meeting to make sure that they are.
But who does the final decision?
Well, the final decision is with the organisers, and it is their responsibility.
What was the outcome of the Monza inquiry?
Well, I don't really know. As you know, it's there's still
this is
things going on.
The Italian police inquiry.
Yes, and as far as I can make out, they still haven't finalised any decision.
But as far as you are concerned, you were absolutely cleared by the racing authorities, were you not?
Yes, I was indeed.
Jim, how many people do you think go to motor race meetings in the hope of seeing an accident like this? Do you think this is one of the big draws of motor racing, the chance of seeing a smash?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't like to think so. I've heard this discussed many times. Certainly, as drivers, we don't race to cause accidents or anything for spectators. Rather the contrary, we drive to...
What are the feelings between drivers during a big and important race, a race with a lot of money at stake?
Well, we all realise there's a danger there, and I think we drive remembering that danger and trying not to make it as little dangerous as possible.
What are your personal feelings about this, knowing that perhaps death is just around the corner? Does it ever occur to you during a race, or can you forget it completely?
Well, you're quite busy during a race to you obviously take the risk into account, but you've got other things on your mind as to.
What is the nearest thing you've ever had? Was it in fact Monza, or have you had a nearer escape?
No, I think Monza probably was.
Well, Jim, let's get away from Monza and turn to a rather happier note. In 1962, you were runner-up to Graham Hill in the World Drivers' Championship. Let's have a look at the Belgian Grand Prix, one of your successes in that year.
Belgian newspapers acclaim Clark's driving and the performance of the British cars. A pall of white smoke could be seen for miles around, marking the spot where Taylor and Meres crashed. Meres's car was completely gutted by the fire, and he escaped with minor injuries. Here is Taylor afterwards. The winner, Jim Clark, averaged over 131 miles an hour and broke the lap record 3 times.
By now it was clear that Jim Clark was the driver to be reckoned with in 1963. And here's a man who has seen almost all of his races, I think. It's Philip Turner, sports editor of The Motor. That is right, Philip, isn't it?
Not quite every race, unfortunately, Derek, because I missed the very dramatic Indianapolis 500 in
Well, I
America.
want to come on to that one in a moment, but let's go to the beginning of the racing calendar. Where do the Grand Prix races start?
In Monte Carlo in the spring, a very pleasant place to start anything.
How did this year's go?
Well, it set the pattern for things to come because Jim went out in front and was leading, but it was one of the 2 races he didn't win. 2 gears selected themselves together, and that was that.
From there to?
Well, there to Indianapolis. As I was saying before, where, as you know, this is not a road circuit, but a high-speed bank circuit, and there Jim showed his incredible versatility by finishing second on his first appearance there.
Well, the press gave this one rather a buffeting, didn't it? We heard lots of "we was robbed" claims. Do you go along with these?
Not entirely. I think, on the whole, it was a good thing that the winner, Parnelli Jones, was not flagged off for shedding oil. He drove a very fine race, and if he had been flagged off, the uproar would have been tremendous.
Yeah.
As it was, he won, and Jim was the moral victim.
And then on to?
On to the Dutch Grand Prix.
Well, we can have a look at this one, I think.
The start of the 208-mile race, and as the roar of engines sped across the grandstand, Clark shot into the lead in his Green Lotus. The reigning world champion, Graham Hill, driving a BRM, was on Clark's tail at this stage, and behind them a mass of cars were changing position or breaking down. Drivers faced 80 laps of the 2.6-mile circuit, and for the first half, Clark and Hill were running first and second. Then Hill had to fall back into 4th place through cooling trouble, and was eventually forced out of the race altogether. With his main challenger gone, Clark sped on to win at an average speed of more than 97 miles an hour, a record speed for the race. His victory puts him at the top of the Drivers' Championship table for the first time. He had 18 points, twice as many as Hill.
An obvious question, and one I must ask you, Philip. How much do you consider the car important, and how much the driver in Grand Prix racing?
I don't think even a top driver can win without a competitive car. I think the Moss story shows this, that unless the car is competitive, he cannot win the championship.
On now then to the Grand Prix. Where do we go from here?
To France, where Jim had a very hard race indeed. Even though he did win, the car went sick, and he showed incredible ability in keeping it ahead, even though it was down on par.
And after France?
To the British Grand Prix, which again he won.
Anything outstanding about the British? This was one of the easier wins.
One of the easier ones, yes.
You say Jim showed an ability to nurse a car along. This is surely one of the qualities of the world champion, is it not?
Indeed, yes. Fangio had it to an extreme degree, I think.
Well, let's go now to the next Grand Prix, that in Germany.
There were 22 starters. Jim Clark, leading in the championship table, got away in front in his Lotus, with Richie Ginther and Graham Hill in their BRMs close behind. The leaders set a furious pace from the start, and it was not long before cars began to drop out. Down the straight, the speed reached 160 miles an hour. Hill, Meres and Gurney were all out after a few laps. When 7 of the 15 laps were completed, 8 cars were already out of the running. Surtees Ferrari was left to fight a lone battle against the British Works entries and the German Porsches. Jim Clark, driving a terrific race in number 3, hung on grimly to Surtees' tail with his engine running on only 7 cylinders. Surtees continued to pile on the pressure until he crossed the line for his first Grand Prix victory at a record-breaking average speed of 95.81 miles an hour.
Philip, are you satisfied with the performances of the British cars this season?
Yes, very. Lotus have won the Constructors' Championship. And although Ferrari are a threat, and a very definite threat, so far the British cars have stayed on top.
Now then, you've known and met probably a great number of champions from Fangio, Brabham, Graham Hill. How do you assess Jim Clark?
Very high indeed. He is tremendously fast around the circuit. A rival constructor says he is now 2 seconds a lap faster around any circuit than any other driver at present racing.
So you put him right there in the classic.
Oh, indeed, yes.
Thank you, Philip. Well, Monza clinched the title for Jim Clark, and then it was back home for the first time as world champion. And the man who sang this calypso at the start of our program, Alex McEwen, is in fact a friend and a neighbour of Jim Clark. Alex, as a friend and neighbour, tell us, what's the local reaction to Jim's wonderful victory?
Oh, everyone's delighted by it. It's marvellous because the Scots, as you know, are very nationalistic-minded. They're a very nationalistic race, and this gives us a chance to have a really worthy hero for a change. You know, it's very rare.
What's sort of Jim as the farmer? Is he, in the true sense, a farmer, or is he one of these gentleman farmers who pops in to see that things are all right now?
No, he's very, very good. You should see his sheep at the Kelso Top sale.
And
I envy them greatly.
I think you just did. Thank you, Alex. Well, that's the reaction at home. But what about the men who opposed Jim Clark on the track? We asked last year's world champion, Graham Hill, down in London, what he thought was the secret of Jim Clark's success this year.
Of course, my car kept breaking down. No, that's very unfair, but without a doubt, his ability to drive extremely fast and get the maximum from his machine, coupled with the fact that he had an extremely well-prepared and brilliantly designed car.
You often raced against him. What's he like on the track as an opponent?
He's a very, very tough opponent. He not only can drive quickly, but he can race. And there's that little distinction from being able to conduct a car quickly around a circuit and then race at the same time, race against other people. And he's very, very tough, resilient, and has got a lot of courage.
Is toughness a characteristic of him off the track as well, or is he different off the track?
I think it depends who he's with. Of course, apart from the opposite sex, I can't answer for them. But for myself, I find him a very likeable chap. He's very personable, and he's good company.
Have you yourself found the name of world champion difficult to live up to during this year?
I've realised that there's a lot has been expected of me, and that I'm an ambassador for the sport, more so than when I hadn't won the title. There's been a lot more calls upon my time to attend functions, dinners, open things, say a few words here, that sort of thing. And I've realised that the sort of things that I do, if I do it well, it reflects on the sport too. So one has to make quite a bit of effort, and of course one has a lot less time to relax. And in racing, I found that I realised that as champion, you're up there to be shot at, and everybody's been having a go at you. Everyone wants to beat you, naturally. I mean, we all do, but to beat the champion is something that we all try and do.
You know Clark well. Do you think he'll be able to live up to the position of champion?
Oh, definitely, yes. There's no doubt there at all. He will find that he'll, have, as I say, less time to himself, but I'm sure he's got every quality that's required of him.
Now, you know Clark's listening to you up on TV in Carlisle. Have you anything you'd like to say to him?
Yes, I hope he goes back to farming.
Jim, what about a reply to that one?
Well, I think he should have kept rowing, actually.
Could I take up one point that Graham Hill made, this about drive and race, the subtle difference between driving a car and racing a car?
Yes, well, to drive a car around a circuit fast requires concentration on how you place the car on a corner, how you get it through the corner at the fastest speed and everything. But this concentration can be, shall we say, knocked a bit by having to follow someone. And I think the difficulty is when you're following someone, you must still be able to concentrate hard enough that you still get through the corner at the same speed, if not quicker.
He also spoke of the demands made on a world champion. How are you viewing these now?
Well, I've been finding this out this last week or so. I've hardly touched the ground since Monza. And
how are you going to feel about your position there when driving as world champion? You're sort of up there on the pinnacle, everyone's going to have a go at you. Do you think this is going to affect you at all?
Well, I think they've all been having a go at me all this past year. I don't think it's going to make any difference at all.
Jim, what useful purpose does motor racing serve? You know, in the terms of the ordinary motorist, what does he get out of this, apart from the sport?
Well, I think there's all sorts of developments which go on in motor racing. I likened it the other day there to the things that happened during the war, where our scientists were pushed into doing things and finding out things which we wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think that we do the same in motor racing. I think we try things out, and usually if they're good, they'll stay with us. And this is continued into the everyday car.
What of the future, Jim? What are your plans?
Well, I intend to go on racing next year at least. And
in the Lotus again?
I expect so.
Thank you very much, Jim. Well, that's the Jim Clark story so far. But I'll leave the final comments to the people who know him so well and who are with him here tonight. First, his old friend, Ian Scott Watson.
Well, Derek, I'm very glad that he won the championship, and I'm delighted to feel that I might have had a small share in helping him to do so.
Next, sports editor Philip Turner.
I think the best man has won, which is a very happy state of affairs.
And finally, a reminiscence from 1962 world champion Graham Hill.
Well, I think one outstanding moment was that I remember very clearly was at the South African Grand Prix last year, when, through no fault of his own, he lost the championship to me. And he must have suffered bitter disappointment at that time. And I think his sportsmanship on that occasion, and after that, I think was a great quality, and it's certainly something that I remember.
And I don't think that I can do any better than to repeat what Stirling Moss said when he said, "I think Jimmy Clark is the best in the world."
So now the story has been unfurled. We've met the man on top of the world. Now the story has been unfurled. We've met the man on top of the world. But in the future, where should he look? To the steering wheel or the shepherd's crook? Will Jim Clark, while he's asleep, be counting the laps or counting the sheep?